Accepting the Unprovable by Cyril Wilson. A talk given by Cyril Wilson at the Congress of the British Society of Dowsers, in Carlisle, on 12th of October, 1986. When I was asked to speak, I wondered what I could contribute when so much has been written and said about healing and dowsing in general. So often of late we have seen programs on television attempting to prove how dowsing works, but generally they end up with the investigator making remarks that cast doubts on all that one has seen in the experiments or tests. It is the same with people who say, well, if you drill for water anywhere you are likely to get it, and doctors who say that the patient has gone into remission, which is quite normal. They are obviously not going to accept what dowsers and healers do. There are many experiences in life that are only proved by the evidence of the results. Someone says I love you, and one can only know and prove this by the evidence of the actions that stem from this. I think that it is important that dowsers themselves should have complete faith in what they are doing and that it works. When I first started to dowse, our past president, Major General Scott Elliott, said to me, "You must always believe in what your pendulum says." Although I have now had many years of experience in successful dowsing, still doubts creep in. One comes across new situations and problems. I am often asked to dowse over sites where drilling is taking place and where it seems no water will be found. Another dowser has marked this and I am asked to confirm or discount his findings. Why should I be more correct than he is? What has caused the failure? It is often an error in depthing. I have experienced this myself once, saying the water would be at 80 meters and it was found at 120 meters and rose to 80 meters, the other 104 meters and it was found at 395 meters and again rose to the estimated depth. I have yet to discover a satisfactory explanation for this error. It is known that dowsers leave a remnants and that these can affect the subsequent findings of other dowsers. I remember very early on in my dowsing life that I was asked to check for water on a site that had been dowsed by a world-famous dowser. I marked the spot that was only 1 foot away from the peg that had been buried so that I should not see it. The drill proved dry and I wondered about this and realized that I hadn't really been looking for water but for the other dowser's location in order to prove my ability to dowse. Of course, clients are wont to call in several dowsers for confirmation. This in itself shows the acceptance of dowsing, for I have yet to find someone drilling for water without first consulting one. I point out to them that they ultimately have to accept the findings of one of them, and this is usually based on the confidence they have in the success rate of the dowser they use. This makes it a little difficult for those starting. It is also a problem with healing. Can one offer healing until one knows one can heal, and will people ask for healing until they have knowledge of the successful treatments by the healer? Now with more healing groups it is possible for individuals to have more confidence in their healing gifts and be prepared to offer their services. In checking drills in progress, marked by another dowser, it is best to start as if it was a virgin dowse and to follow the flows and see if one passes under the rig. I often find that a dowser has been misled by black shale or clay where its dampness can give a response similar to water. Fortunately, my rod indicates by a different movement when I am over such material. I use what I call a Moses rod, a straight rod of fiberglass. It goes up and down normally, revolves over water and moves sideways when over clay or shale. This is, of course, because I am aware that they exist. No dowser should dowse without gaining as much knowledge as possible of the geological background of the site, but in the end the actual physical dowsing is the same. For example, I was recently asked to dowse for gold in Montana, USA. Now one can think in terms of load, gold nuggets and veins of gold, but gold dust to the quantity of half an ounce to the ton of clay can be a paying proposition. The thinking is so important. The rod or pendulum will only be the visual confirmation of what is already known in the mind, but it gives one the confidence to give an answer. If the mind is not clear and the concentration not held, the result will be as muddled as the thinking and as this talk may appear to be to you. A person was walking home with a lay preacher after church and he said that was a good sermon, but I didn't understand one thing. You said phenomenon. What is phenomenon? The lay preacher replied, well, a cow in a field, or a thistle or a lark wouldn't be a phenomenon, but if you saw that cow sitting on a thistle singing like a lark, that would be a phenomenon. Dowsing to some seems as strange and unlikely as that phenomenon. Perhaps we are as guilty in the clarity of our explanations and theories as the lay preacher in his mispronunciation. Perhaps my talk should have been entitled The Acceptance of the Inexplicable rather than The Unprovable, for if the evidence is such that it is acceptable, it is proven but not explained. I have listened many times to theories as to how dowsing works, but I have not heard one that is fully satisfactory. I was visiting someone who asked how my healing was going, and then he said he didn't believe in it, but as he had a frozen shoulder I perhaps would give him a treatment to see if anything happened. If it works, he said, it can't be psychosomatic. Half an hour after the treatment he said his arm was still very hot, and to his surprise he could put on his jacket in a normal way. He then proceeded to do a dozen press-ups to get the pain back and prove that healing didn't work. The pain didn't come back, and I saw him 3 months later and he said he had gone swimming the next day and swam a mile doing the crawl, and when he kept his next appointment at the hospital they told him the arm was completely better. He is now in Gibraltar and sends me names of people needing distant healing, and when I visited there he had a queue of people waiting for healing. Obviously healing had become proven and acceptable to him. It is connection with distant healing that I sometimes have doubts, not in the thought of the power that flows through one, but is the patient still there? Many are slow to write and some cannot because of their disability or illiteracy, and friends forget the importance of keeping the healer aware of the state of progress. Is one's healing working? Uri Geller has popped up again on television, once again demonstrating the power of distant thought by the destructive use of it in spoon bending. We should remember that everything has a positive and negative side, and what can be used for good can be used for ill. I once opened a combination safe by dowsing for the combination, at the request of the owner who had lost it, but one can see how such powers can be used. We should be very careful in what we do. Distant healing is very lonely and exhausting, and it is good to keep in mind times when one has been able to help, such as a patient in London expecting a child after 5 or 6 miscarriages who asked for help. One of the problems was blood pressure, and this immediately went down to normal. Going early into hospital, the baby was found to be in breech position and there was talk of a caesarean section. However, the baby turned in the womb and an easy birth ensued. A combination of hand healing and distant and a brain tumor disappeared, and now the person has married and is working as a teacher of physical education. So often the patient comes not because healing is proven but because they have exhausted all other means of help. They are often surprised when they feel heat or cold, formication, stretching and even levitation, and one patient was certain that I was burning incense, so they have evidence that something is happening. This can also happen when treating at a distance. Once a patient asked me to stop treating him while he was making a journey because of the sensations he received while I was doing his treatment. He thought it would be difficult to cope with while he was traveling. It is also possible for the patient to tune into the healer and to receive treatment without the healer consciously transmitting. Recently I had a man come to me asking for help with a frozen shoulder. He had had it for 8 years and had tried many kinds of healing. After one treatment, during which, unusual in my experience, he experienced a lot of pain, he said the arm was 90% better, and after another treatment it was okay. He had tried acupuncture etc., and said they didn't work, but the reverse could have happened, so the acceptance is dependent on the evidence of success in each case. It is possible that one form of healing is better than another in different patients. I never say I will heal you, only that I will give treatment. Some healers perhaps wisely ask if they should give healing, but as I do not advertise my healing, I take it that those who come to me were intended to do so by some greater power. Therefore I should do my best to help them. I have found that one seems to get a run of the same kind of problems, several frozen shoulders and elbows at the same time as the one mentioned. After talking to a group of dowsers in Edinburgh, one woman asked me to treat her elbow, and as I put my hands near it we both were surprised to hear a loud crack as if a bone had broken. The elbow was then better. It is a kind of experience that people find hard to accept unless they experience it themselves. I have mentioned the point about the use of one's powers, or perhaps better called gifts. A woman came to me asking me to induce an abortion. I asked her why, and she said she felt she would die if it was born, as she was in her early 40s and had a hard time when a son had been born 19 years earlier. By coincidence I had received 2 photos a day or 2 earlier, one of the child born to the London patient and of a little girl born to my nephew's wife, and she was also in her 40s. I was able to show these to the woman and assure her that the fetus of 6 weeks was a healthy little girl and that all would be well. I also advised her to see a gynecologist. Of course, I used the pendulum for diagnosing and gave her treatment to take away her anxiety. 7 months later she came to see me with the little girl and then asked me to dowse for a name for her. Incidentally, she hadn't consulted a gynecologist but said the birth was very easy. As she wanted to breastfeed the baby, she asked for treatment to increase the milk supply, and she is the one who came knocking on my door at 3 a.m. as was mentioned in a letter recently and printed in the journal. Although I have no doubts myself that dowsing works, it is sometimes surprising to me that dowsing and map dowsing is so readily accepted. When the farmers come to me now in Ibiza, asking me to find water, they bring a little drawing of their land so that I can give a preliminary opinion. I was dowsing in a wood in Ibiza for a Roman tunnel that was reputed to have started at the sea and worked back to an abandoned mine, when a man appeared and asked me if I would look for some men that had molested a girl. I thought this was more important than the Roman tunnel, so went to a nearby town where he took me to the Guardia. They accepted without hesitation that dowsing could help and produced a large map of the island from off the wall of the police station and photographs of the girl. My findings of a connection with a certain village brought forth the statement that a car thought to have been used was found there. I later indicated a spot in the mountains where I thought they had holed up, and when the Guardia went there, which entailed a long walk, they found a disused house with signs of occupation but no men. It did show that they accepted the unprovable. Incidentally, some time after this episode we went looking for the tunnel again. We parked the car and then I went into the wood, and without using the rod or pendulum I walked to a spot, where, by the evidence of a depression and fissure, there had been obviously a subterranean fall, no doubt the collapse of the tunnel at this point. Several times I have had the experience of feeling the direction of the water in my body and haven't needed to use the rod. As I have said, they are only the indication of what is already within one's knowledge. When dowsing for lost animals, vehicles or people, it is best to do it at night when they are likely to be less mobile. Once when seeking a stolen motorcycle I indicated where I thought it was, some 10 miles away, and when they went there, they found an identical machine in make and color but the wrong number. You can see how necessary it is to keep all the details in mind while dowsing. I was recently asked to dowse for a boy who had run away from his school some 14 miles from his home. My dowsing showed that he was a mile or so from his home, but we didn't find him. That was at 8 a.m., after he had been missing for 24 hours. I said to the parents that I would try again after dark, but just before that, he was found a mile away from what I had indicated in the morning. One mentioned that Major General Scott Elliott had told me to believe my pendulum, but it is possible to influence it by wishful thinking. I remember wanting to see a certain person and asking if they were at home. The pendulum said no, but I persisted asking until at last it said have it your own way. Yes, when I went of course she wasn't there. It is possible to make one's own rules, for example, Bishop's rule when one should walk away from the stream at right angles. It is possible to start in this way and then change direction right angles to that, and the depthing will be the same. The same when quantifying, one can say a step will represent 100 liters per hour or 1000 lph, it is what is in the mind. There are many aspects of dowsing in which one is not involved and one accepts the statements of the people specializing in these. I can remember when ley lines and black streams were very much doubted, but now they are generally accepted because the evidence of their existence has been manifested by the collective evidence of their effect on people living over or in their influence. Recently one of our local members has complained of back pains that intensify and then ease off after an earthquake or volcanic eruption. One can pooh-pooh this, but surely one should accept the possibility. Logically, sound waves can be received all over the world and even from outer space, so it is not inconceivable that geophysical shock waves can be picked up and cause discomfort. It is interesting to note how many branches of dowsing interrelate. For example, one is made aware that a problem that needs healing treatment is caused by an environmental situation, and so one becomes concerned with these forces. We have to keep an open mind and test all theories against the evidence of their probability. They may become proven, but I have no doubt they will still be inexplicable. End of talk.